بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. في محاضرة اليوم سوف نتكلم عن الجزء الثاني من الحركة الأمريكية للحقوق المدنية American Civil Rights Movement. Moreover, Southern segregation gained the ground in 1896 when the U.S. Supreme Court declared in Plessy v. Ferguson that facilities for black and white people could be separate but equal, mean the facilities for black people are separate from the facilities of white people. That declaration by the Supreme Court gained ground in 1896. إذا الانفصال في الجنوب أصبح واقعا في عام 1896 عندما أعلنت المحكمة العليا الأمريكية بأن الخدمات العامة في فيرغسون بالنسبة للبيض والسود سوف تكون منفصلة ولكن متساوية. American Civil Rights Movement, Second World War and Civil Rights. Prior to the Second World War, most black people worked as low-wage farmers, factory workers, domestic or servants. By the early 1940s, war-related work was booming, and most black Americans were not given better paying jobs. They were also discouraged from joining the military. So, before the end of the Second World War, most black people worked as farmers or workers in a factory or domestic servants. They were not allowed to have access to jobs as other white people. Most Americans were not given better paying jobs. They were also discouraged joining the military, and they are not encouraged to join the American army. So the American black were feeling or used to feel that they are not treated equally like white people. قبل نهاية الحرب العالمية الثانية معظم السود أو الشعب الأسود الأمريكي كانوا يعملون كمزارعين أو في مصانع أو خدم ولم يتلقوا الاهتمام الكامل أو السماح لهم بالحصول على وظائف عالية برواتب مجزية بالإضافة إلى أنه تم عدم تشجيعهم للالتحاق بالجيش الأمريكي. فكان طبعا الشعب الأمريكي الأسود يشعر بالتهميش وعدم الاهتمام من المؤسسة الحاكمة في أمريكا. After thousands of black people threatened to march on Washington to demand equal employment rights, President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued executive order on June 25, 1941. It opened national defense jobs and other government jobs to all Americans, regardless of race, creed, color, or national origin. Thousands of black people protested, threatened to march to Washington. And why Washington? Because it is the place of the American government. They need equal jobs and equal employment rights. Due to this protest and due to these demonstrations, President Franklin Roosevelt issued executive order, which means opening national defense jobs for the black people and opening other government jobs for the black people too, and all Americans, regardless of race, creed, color, or national origin. آلاف من الشعب الأمريكي الأسود هددوا طبعا بالذهاب إلى واشنطن مركز الحكومة الأمريكية لكي يطلبوا وظائف عادلة ومساواة في الوظائف. هذا من هنا اضطر الرئيس الأمريكي في ذلك الوقت فرانكلين روزفلت بأن يعلن قرار تنفيذي بأن السماح للشعب الأمريكي الأسود بالانضمام إلى الجيش وإلى وظائف حكومية أخرى، وبغض النظر عن اللون وعن العرق وعن طبعا الأصل الوطني أو الجنسية الوطنية. As said, it opened national defense jobs and other government jobs to all Americans, regardless of creed, color, or national origin. Black men and women served heroically in the Second World War, despite suffering segregation and discrimination. During deployment, the Tuskegee Airmen broke the racial barrier to become the first black military aviators in the U.S. Army Corps and earned more than 150 distinguished flying crosses. In spite of the discrimination meted against black men and women, they served in a heroic way in the Second World War, despite they suffered from segregation and discrimination even in the army and even during their deployment during the war. The Tuskegee Airmen broke the racial barrier to become the first black military aviator in the U.S. Army Corps and earned more than 150 distinguished flying crosses for their services in the U.S. Army. Yet many black veterans met with prejudice and scorn in spite of their service for for the country, for America. They were met with prejudice and scorn and disrespect upon returning home. This was a stark contrast to why America had entered the war to begin with, to defend the freedom and democracy in the world. So black people, despite of their service and hard work and sacrifices in the Second World War, while serving in the U.S. Army, they were met with prejudice, scorn of returning home, and it was a stark contrast to why America had entered the war to begin with, because the slogan of going to war is to defend the freedom and democracy in the world. إذا الرجال والنساء السود خدموا في الجيش الأمريكي ببطولة وببسالة أثناء الحرب العالمية الثانية، بالرغم من الفصل العنصري والتمييز خلال خدمتهم العسكرية والانتشار العسكري. تزكي الطيارين لقد قاموا بتحطيم هذا الحاجز العنصري وأصبحوا طبعا من الطيارين الأوائل السود الذين خدموا في الجيش الأمريكي، ولقد حازوا على أكثر من 150 وسام لتميزهم في الخدمة. بالرغم من ذلك وبالرغم من خدمتهم في الجيش الأمريكي وبالرغم من تضحياتهم، لقد تم استقبالهم بالاحتقار وعدم الاحترام والعنصرية والظلم وعدم المساواة عندما عادوا إلى الوطن، وهذا كان يتناقض مع شعار أمريكا أثناء الحرب العالمية الثانية أنها دولة تحارب من أجل الحرية والديمقراطية في العالم. As the Cold War began, President Harry Truman initiated a civil rights agenda and in 1948 issued Executive Order 9981 to end discrimination in the military. These events set the stage for grassroots initiatives to enact racial equality legislation and incite the civil rights movement. So when the Cold War began, President Harry Truman initiated and they began a civil rights agenda and in 1948 issued executive order to end discrimination in the military. And that means equal treatment for the black soldiers and white soldiers. These events helped to set the stage for grassroots initiatives to enact racial equality. That was the beginning to call for racial equality legislation and inside the civil rights movement. عندما بدأت الحرب الباردة لقد بدأ الرئيس هاري ترومان بقائمة وبسلسلة من الإجراءات آه، بالنسبة للحقوق المدنية في عام 1948 أصدر قرار تنفيذي بإنهاء التمييز العنصري في الجيش الأمريكي. هذه الأحداث لقد مهدت الطريق إلى مبادرات من أجل سن تشريع للمساواة العرقية والتحريض من أجل الحصول على حقوق أخرى تتوجت وتبلورت في الحركة المدنية الأهلية. So we go back to the American rights movement. We try to sum up our lecture. It is about the American civil rights movement. It is about the Southern segregation, which began around in 1896 when the U.S. Supreme Court declared Ferguson that facilities for black and white people could separate but equal. The Second World War transformed the way black people were treated because most of black people worked at a low-wage farmers, factory workers, domestic or servant, and by the early 1940s, war-related work was booming. Most black Americans were not given the better paying jobs that created a kind of discrimination, and also they were discouraged from joining the military. Thousands of black people threatened to launch demonstration, threatened to march to Washington to demand equal payment rights, and that forced President Franklin Roosevelt to issue executive order allowing them to join the army and other jobs, saying that all Americans are allowed to have jobs regardless of race, creed, color, or national origin. Also, the Second World War helped them to fight for their rights because the black women and black men and women served heroically in the Second World War, despite suffering segregation and discrimination during their deployment, and it was another step towards equality and racial equality. Yet many black veterans met with prejudice and scorn when they returned home. This was at a stark contrast to why America had entered the war, saying to defend the freedom and democracy in the world, but at the same time, it treats black people in a different way. As the Cold War began, President Harry Truman initiated a civil rights agenda, and in 1948 it was a transforming moment when he issued executive order to end discrimination in the military. This event paved the way for grassroots initiatives to enact racial equality legislation and incite and herald for the civil rights movement. If you like this lecture, please leave a comment and subscribe if you forget to subscribe. Thank you, and we will see you in other